My buy low is actually your faller of the week, Josh Allen. 4 consecutive games of sub 17 scores in a row, so it's not looking good at all. But I still think he's definitely a QB1,
Yeah,
and I
definitely.
reckon right now you could get him for very, very cheap.
It's likely. So
Um,
DJ Dallas, he's the last man standing in the Seattle backfield, just scored 22 against the 49ers because of 2 touchdowns. But I'd say he's pretty much a lock to score a touchdown in that Seattle offense. And yeah, he's going to get all the opportunity to himself. Probably isn't the best player, but opportunity is key. And being
It's a miracle! Oh yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable! Balotelli, Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle. Oh, the ball is close. He's given him. He's given him. Peter Siddle's got a hat trick on his birthday.
Welcome back to the On the Ball podcast. This is episode 83 of the show. Pleasure to have you here today with us. Once again, joined by Christian Pilcher. How are we, mate?
good, mate. Good to be back again.
Yeah, we were only here yesterday talking about the NFL in real life. Not sure what other kind of NFL you can have, but today, well, I guess you can have NFL fantasy, which is what we're talking about today. In previous weeks, we've done them as one episode, but this week we decided to split them. So if you want to go listen to our real life NFL thoughts and analysis, go back to yesterday's episode and go check that out. But today is going to be strictly fantasy stuff, which is the stuff we love. I'm so very excited for it. Bit of a tester today, new structure, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, pretty excited to get into it. Lots of good stuff to talk about. So we're going to have a rises and falls section at the start, which we have done every week. So who's risen up our rankings, who's fallen. We're going to have a buy low, sell high section, and then to finish us off, we're going to have a streaming section. So this is as much for me as it is for you guys listening, because I actually need to sort out my side for this week. But rises of the week, we'll start with the main position on the field. Well, not really for fantasy, but QBs. Who's risen up your rankings this week, Pilch, in the QB slot?
I've gone big Justin Herbert. Pretty much a riser every week, but I mean, he just keeps pumping out over 20 points against everyone he plays, even some solid defenses like Denver last week. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to not have him in your top 8.
Yeah, every week they seem to just score between 25 and 35 points, and they're not really rushing for many touchdowns. He's throwing most of them. So, yeah, at the moment, he's looking like a guaranteed QB1, and they've got some pretty easy fixtures coming up. I was having a look at him before, and it's looking pretty juicy for him. So if there's anyone out there that needs a QB, maybe throw the kitchen sink at Herbert, because this is probably your last chance, because I think he scored like 21 or something, which was pretty good. But I think from here on in, it's going to be strictly 25s he's going to be operating on. Got high expectations for him. But yeah, Herbert, big riser. He's legit been a riser every week. We've done this podcast, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, good shout. For me, this is a rogue one. I've actually gone Cam Newton. It sounds pretty crazy, but this is because he was pretty low on my rankings, so not too hard to rise. But he was a last-minute fumble. He had a fumble in the last drive, which cost the Patriots the game. But in fantasy terms, that's a -2 or whatever it is, and that put him under 20 for the. And that would have been the first time he cracked 20 since week 2. And I'm not saying he's back to that, first 2-week form, but he had his lowest completion percentage of the year, which you're thinking, oh, that's not good. He's in bad form. But he still managed to get 174 yards off on a horrible day in Buffalo. It was cold. It was wet. Everyone was just running. But more importantly, he had 54 yards on the ground with a rushing TD. So at this point, it is getting to kind of the stage where if he doesn't get a rushing TD, it's ropes for Cam Newton. But that's not even the worst situation. In a one QB league, I'm not sure how relevant he is, because I think nowadays he's a little bit away from being a QB1, but definitely in a QB2 or super flex league like ours, I definitely think he's not a bad second quarterback to have. Or yeah, but in a QB1, he's probably like if you've got the worst QB rocking, he's probably not the worst going around. But yeah, he's found Jacoby Myers, who he seems to really like. He's had double-digit targets in the last 2 games, I think. And N'Keal Harry's coming back from injury. They signed a wide receiver from the Dolphins, and the running game starting to look a lot better with Damien Harris coming back from injury. So I'm not saying the Patriots are going to come out and start scoring 30 points a game, but I think things are on the up. I think Cam pretty much hit rock bottom after the COVID scare. So I think from here, it's going to be hard to see him continue doing as bad as he has been. So I think it's not a bad little situation for Cam. But yeah, as I said, if you have a 1 QB league, he's probably not that relevant, is he? But do you think Cam Newton's worthy of a QB1 spot or not?
Only against like bad defenses probably for now, but
Yeah,
fair call. I think he's a riser as well because he dropped down so low after last week.
Yeah, exactly. They've got the Jets this week as well, who you'd imagine they're scoring, 3 touchdowns at least against, and there's not really anyone else to score them except for himself.
He'd be
So
a good play
not
this
too
week,
bad.
definitely.
Yeah. All right, fallers. Who have you got in the quarterback position?
Forwards, I've gone Josh Allen. Another pretty poor game from the big man against New England, who are known for being a good defense, but
Yeah.
that's 2 games in a row now where he's looked quite poor, and I'd probably now take him out of that like top 5 elite tier for sure. He's probably around like 7 or 8 for me now, when he was top
Yeah.
4.
I agree with that. I actually might have him in a section later. We were talking before we came on air. There's a little bit of overlap going on with these sections, but definitely a fall. I think that's his 4th sub 20 score in a row after going the first 5 weeks. First 4 weeks, he was like just balling out.
And I believe
So
he
yeah,
had
not good signs.
a rushing touchdown as well.
Yeah, he did.
So that
He
kind
did.
of saved him from having an absolute stinker.
Yeah, and Buffalo's offense right now is just in tatters. They're not really getting it going in the air or in the ground. So bit worries in Buffalo in real life as well. They're just not playing that well. But hopefully, I'll talk about it in another section, as I said. But who knows? His fortune might turn. But yeah, 100% a faller, and yeah, not in that top tier at all anymore.
Yeah.
My faller is Carson Wentz. This is another guy who might come up in a later section. I don't know, because it is his first bad score in a while, but he whipped out an 8.62 against the Cowboys, including 4 turnovers. And this is the Cowboys, one of the worst defenses in the league this year. He had his 5th game with the completion percentage under 60. So it's pretty he's got to be attempting a lot of passes to have a lot of passing yards at the moment with that completion percentage. But yeah, as I mentioned, he could be a buy low situation. But yeah, right now I'm not really sure if he's a top 12 quarterback. There's obviously a lot of better options out there, and safe options, I'd say. But their offense, they do have players coming back, so that should help Wentz. But yeah, right now, it doesn't really matter who's on the park. He's just playing pretty bad. And similar to Cam Newton, it's kind of just a rushing touchdown or bust at the moment for Wentz. So yeah, not. I'd be quite worried if I was a Wentz owner and he was my QB1 at the moment. All right, running backs, riser of the week, mate.
I've gone real obvious here, but Dalvin Cook pumped out 4 touchdowns against Green Bay. Kind of hard to rise when you're already a certified top 5 man, but I had him last out of that tier with like Kamara, McCaffrey, Henry, and Jones, and now he's probably 2nd or 3rd. So I'd definitely have him above Henry and Jones now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Cook is an absolute beast in that top echelon of running backs, and he's a must-have.
Yeah.
I would die to have Dalvin Cook at the moment. He's absolutely killing it. At the start of the season, I was a bit worried about him. Madison was getting a lot of touches, but that's kind of faded the last 2 weeks. And he's just taken over. And I think they've actually got pretty enticing fixtures coming up.
Yeah,
and if they take the lead, well then Carson. It's game over for Cook. Sorry, not Carson. My riser of the week in the running back spot. I've gone for a pod. I haven't gone for a primo. I've got Damien Harris. Mentioned him before with Cam Newton, but you and me, we've been keeping a lot of fantasy experts. Well, not experts, players. We wouldn't call us experts, but we've been keeping an eye on him. Yeah, I actually would. We've been keeping an eye on him since his return from injury. For the second time in 4 matches upon returning to the side, he's gone over 100 yards on the ground. He has had over 5 yards per carry in 3 of his 4 matches he's played. Red zone and receiving are what's limiting him from being like a starting option, I'd say, at the moment. He's not really involved in the air game because they just go to James White for everything. And then the red zone, he did score a rushing touchdown on the weekend, but I think he split red zone attempts with Rex Burkhead. But hopefully, as Harris is only young, I think he got drafted last year and then I think he missed the whole season last season due to injury. I'm not 100% sure on that though, but I know this is his first season of playing. And so, yeah, you'd hope as he continues to do well, he might start to take more of the red zone rushes away from Burkhead, and that would definitely spring him into starting running back contention. But at the moment, he's probably not in that tier. But given the amount of injuries in the running back position, I think due to his high floor with the amount of times he gets the footy on the ground, I think he's definitely worth picking up on the bench and definitely worth having a look at, because if their offense all of a sudden starts to hit their straps and they start moving the ball a lot easier, well then the red zone attempts are only going to increase. So I think he's a decent option, and they've got the Jets, the Ravens, and the Texans in the next 3. Some of them are a good run defense, but they will likely provide a good game script, and then some of the other, and then the Texans are a bit of both. So there's something in all 3 of those matches for Harris. So I'm very intrigued. I'm kind of tempted to get him myself at the moment, but yeah, I like Damien Harris a lot. Like the high floor he brings to the team. What about you for Faller of the Week here?
Yep, good shout there. Faller of the Week. I'm finally putting him in the fallers. He's been pretty Boris all year, but Jonathan Taylor, he officially sucks at football. They play Detroit Lions, one of the worst run defenses in the league. He had like 12 carries for 20 yards. They bring on Wilkins. Wilkins just tortures them. He's in like the best situation you could possibly want as your fantasy running back. Best O-line in the league, getting 20 plus touches a game, but he's just doing absolutely nothing with them. And it's pretty safe to call him a flop now. Like I'll be looking to sell him this week, but no one will want him, so he'll probably be on the waivers.
Yeah, he's a faller for me as well. Before this week and before the bye, he had 2 weeks of 15 points, so that's not too bad. You'll take that. But this week he got out carried by Wilkins, and then including a red zone attempt, which is always not what you want to see when you think you've got a certified RB1. And yeah, the game script suited him perfectly as well. Yeah. Like they hit the lead pretty quick, and you thought they would have just started to run it, Taylor to run it down their throats, but he just couldn't get it going. In the last 3 matches, he's had this is his carry totals. He's had 12, 12, and 11.
Yeah.
And if you compare that to the certified RB1s, they're getting a lot more than that. They're looking at 18, 20s. So yeah, I agree with you there. Taylor has definitely fallen a little bit. Do you think he's still worth a start? Like, do you think he's in the top 24 running backs in the competition?
Yeah, like I'll still be valuing him in there, all jokes aside. But this week against Baltimore, you can't really be starting him.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I don't think he's a buy low, but I don't know. It's a tough one, isn't he?
He honestly could be a buy low, depending what you.
Yeah, because he could. Like, I actually still think he's going to be their RB1, but
yeah, he should.
Like, I think he's still going to lead Wilkins in carries, but as I said before, yeah, just 12, 11, 10 carries. You don't really want those numbers, do you? No. Especially when he's not going like Sam Fran yards per carry numbers.
Most of those previous weeks where he was getting no carries was because of game script. Like the Bengals, they went down
Yeah.
21-0 in the first quarter. But this was the first week where he had all the perfect scenarios going for him, and he cocked it up. So
Yeah, but I think Wilkins is questionable for this week, so that might
Ooh.
be worth having a look at. But as you said, it is a tough matchup, but who knows? All right, my wide receiver riser of the week, I've gone Corey Davis. I think he actually does he still sit on the waivers in our league?
I picked him up today. I dropped
Okay.
Sterling Shepard.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm
Corey
not really confident in him being on the waivers, but kind of like my wide receivers. But yeah, second game with 10 targets in a row. He had 10 targets last week as well. Caught his third touchdown in 5 matches, and he's got a pretty tough run of fixtures. But I was looking at those teams they've got, and they're all pretty good run defenses, which means they're likely gonna, well, if he can, if it's possible to, they're likely going to limit Derrick Henry, which means the Titans will have to start throwing more than they like to, and that's only going to see Davis increase targets, and also the game script will probably start to suit them because they aren't in the greatest of form in the last 2 weeks. They have played 2 decent sides. Well, the Steelers are a great team, and the Bengals have been in good form. But yeah, they've got a few tough games in there, so it wouldn't shock me if in a couple of them they go down early and have to just start throwing it. So I think Davis and Brown will both benefit from that. So yeah, for me, he's a big riser this week, and yeah, it was probably pretty rude that he didn't get picked up in the initial waivers for this week, but I didn't pick him up, so I can't really talk. But yeah, is he your riser of the week? If you gone someone else,
I've gone someone else, but definitely agree he is a riser. I've gone with. I'm finally buying into Travis Fulgham. I think this was Jalen Reagor came back and Fulgham remained as the clear alpha, and he still balled out. And he hasn't gone below, I think, 14 points since he debuted like 6 weeks ago. And he's genuinely copping like minimum 8 targets a week. So, I mean, there's a lot to like, and he's got a very good fixture going forward. I think the Eagles have one of the easiest remaining schedules in terms of passing defenses. So I think he's a big riser and someone you could probably buy low, considering he's still a bit of a myth, and his name's Travis Fulgham.
Yeah, interesting. That's very interesting. I might be contradicting that later, but we'll see. My faller of the week is my man, formerly your man, Deontay Johnson. Last week he returned, well, had his first game where he was fully fit basically, and he went for 15 targets, absolute beast against the Titans. And then this week he left us owners with 3 targets, 1 catch, and the catch came in like the last 2 minutes, I'm pretty sure. So it was against a good defense, and he's got better fixtures to come. But yeah, for me right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver core it's very hard to trust with fantasy. It's almost like the San Francisco backfield.
Yeah,
like
cool.
1 week Claypool's getting 10 targets, Washington gets 10 targets, bloody Juju gets 10 targets, Deontay gets 15. Like Deontay, in my opinion, is still the best fantasy option quite comfortably, but yeah, it's starting to look a bit bleak for all of their hopes as they have kind of started to take each other out.
The bloke keeps doing injuries mid-game as well. Pretty sure
he did miss it.
Yeah.
He missed like 5 minutes or something in the first quarter, but yeah, not ideal. And there was a defensive pass interference on like a 60-yard bomb that he could have got to, but yeah, not ideal at all. 3 targets. You'd be liking a lot more from someone who you're starting. Well, I started. Almost cost me my fixture. Cheers, brother. Who's your wide receiver in the faller category?
DJ Chark. He's been pretty poor recently, but now that Gardner Minshew has fractured his thumb or whatever he did, and he'll miss some time, Chark is pretty much irrelevant in my opinion while Minshew's out. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. You can't really start him anymore at all.
Yeah, I was pretty low on Chark.
He's become a bit of a myth, actually.
Because Keelan Cole and Laviska Shenault have both had great volume this year. And, like, yeah, I've been pretty low on Chark. Like, I think when I did my rankings 2 or 3 weeks ago, he was down with, like, Michael Gallup in, like, the 60s. But, yeah, not keen on him at all. Rate that call. Game script might suit them, but if you've got a myth, if you've got a guy who's not the greatest at throwing, it doesn't really matter who's if what the score is. It's just not going to be good signs for them. And James Robinson pretty much does everything for them these days. But yeah, good call. Tight end riser of the week. I've got probably another weird one, but Evan Ingram. He's finally strung together two decent performances, which he's been struggling with this year. He's had a couple good ones, and then he always backs it up with a stinker. But he finally, last week he had 9 targets. This week he had 10 targets against two really good defenses as well. And their offense is starting to lift in general. They were right in there with Tampa, scored 23 points against arguably the league's best defense. So red zone chances should increase for him as they play some easier teams coming up. But yeah, I think Ingram has risen up my rankings because he was starting to get pretty low on them. But I still think he's a tight end one. And yeah, someone who I wouldn't mind having in my side. Who's your riser of the week?
Yep, good call there. I've gone TJ Hawkinson. I think he might have been my riser last week. But I reckon he's now especially now that Kittle's gone, I reckon he's the number 4 man behind Kelsey, Waller, and Andrews going forward. Fant and the Gronk may have something to say about it, but I'd probably take the Hawk over them 3. He's actually he pumps out like 12 every week, which is exactly what you want. You don't want any of this 20 or 3 bullshit. You just want a bit of consistency. And that's exactly what the Hawk brings to the table.
Yeah, we called it, didn't we, mate? There was about
we love the Hawk.
Yeah, there was like 3 blokes who were in the preseason rankings from about like 14 to 17, but you kind of just knew like 1 or 2 of them were going to go beast this year. Well, that was my rankings anyway, and yeah, one of them was the Hawk. But we both knew there was a pretty strong chance he was going to break out this season. So yeah, good on the Hawk. Well done to the owners who picked him up. They're laughing at the moment. He's probably arguably better than Andrews these days, but
genuinely true.
My faller of the week is, I think you actually rate this guy a lot higher than I do, but it's Jonnu Smith. He's recently been dropped to the waivers in our league, and you think, well, I don't know what you think about the decision, but you're saying someone who our Kittle owner should definitely pick him up, and they've got their tight end sorted, but I'm not sure about that because he's had his 3rd sub 5-point performance in a row. 8 targets across 3 matches, and in the first month of the competition, he had 7 or more 3 times, and now he's hardly got that in 3 weeks. He's got some pretty rough fixtures to come as well, and I know I was saying the game script will suit like for Davis, but yeah, Jonnu, just not sure about it. I think at the moment, like a lot of tight ends, he's back to just relying on touchdowns and against like the Colts. And I can't remember who else they've got coming. I think they've got the Ravens to come. Colts twice. It's going to be tough to see them scoring a lot of points. So yeah, for me, Jonnu is no longer a tight end one. I think there's a lot of juicier options. Like Albert.
Don't know about that, but
don't know about that either. But he's my faller. What do you think about that?
He's my faller as well.
Oh, beautiful thing.
For the exact reasons you've just said. But the reason I said the Kittle owner should pick him up is because the tight ends are pretty Boris this year, and he's lost Kittle. He had no backup. So out of everyone, I was checking our waivers, and there's not really anyone to go for apart from like Jared Cook, who is also reliant on touchdowns. So I reckon he's
I'd rather Tonyan, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's who Tyler got for Jonnu.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. All right. Fair play. I think we've done pretty well there. Enjoyed it as always. Now onto the buy low, sell high section. So we've passed our bread and butter and we're into new territory here. Haven't done this before. But who are your QBs in this section? Just maybe say whether you're buying low or selling high, because that could cause some confusion.
Yep. So buy low quarterback Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy
only scored 10 or maybe 12 against the Falcons, which does not look good on paper. But he did come out of the game for, I think, a full quarter or most of a quarter.
Yeah.
And going forward, he still has elite weapons in Anderson and DJ Moore, and CMC is returning this week. and he's like genuinely pretty good. So I think he's a huge buy low because his average doesn't look that good. So if you can get him for cheap, that'd be a steal.
Yeah, and the game script pretty much always suits Carolina.
Yeah.
So he's definitely a juicy option. Rate that one. I've got their receivers in the buy low section, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
Same.
My buy low is actually your faller of the week, Josh Allen. 4 consecutive games of sub 17 scores in a row, so it's not looking good at all. But I still think he's definitely a QB1.
Yeah,
and I reckon right now you could get him for very, very cheap. And he's got a favourable matchup this week against Seattle. I know it's not all about short-term glory, but basically I would want to get him before this week because I think he might do pretty well there. But yeah, the offense has been pretty bad form in the last month. But if you look at how the offense has gone since the start of 2019, they've been pretty good. So you'd like to think it's just a bit of bad form and they're going to bounce back. And that will inevitably see Josh Allen bounce back to good fantasy form. John Brown's also been out. I think he played on the weekend but didn't do anything. But him coming back helps the offense because it like stretches it out and just adds another receiver for the defenders to think about. Zach Moss is now back, and their running game for the first time on the weekend finally did something. And yeah, the cold weather in Buffalo, I know this is a pretty weird rogue thing to take into account, but they're probably going to start running a lot more than they've been passing. But he's probably going to be a huge beneficiary of that as well because he loves a scoot out of the quarterback position. And yeah, he's still a huge rushing TD threat, as we saw on the weekend. He snagged one there. I think that's now maybe 6 for the season, maybe 5, which is what we love. We've seen Kyler been doing it week in, week out, and it's made him one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy. And yeah, he's had, in the last 3 weeks, he's had 2 matches where he's had less than 30 attempts. But that's because the game against Kansas, it was pouring down. And the game against New England, it was horrible conditions. And as I said, the weather does get worse at this time of year, but it's unlikely to be that bad every single week. So you would expect him to get back above 30 attempts a game. And yeah, like for example, I checked the weather this week. It's looking good. And then they play Arizona next week, which is the desert. So it probably won't be bad there. So yeah, I think Josh Allen's definitely a buy low for me personally. Do you think that's fair, or would you just are you still a bit worried about
that's
him?
a good call. He's definitely a QB1, probably a top 8 QB still. So if you can get him for a good price, definitely do it.
Yeah. All right, sell high. Who are you going here?
I've actually gone with your man Cam Newton in my sell high.
I found this hard by the way, the sell high. I didn't even know who to go with.
Yeah, I just blokes
for this position.
Blokes that did well last week, pretty much.
Yeah, for the other positions, I didn't find it too hard, but for the QBs, I didn't think there was many. But
I found the QBs hard for every section. But yeah, Cam Newton scored 18 or something. I think scored a rushing touchdown.
Yeah,
and I think people are still going to remember what he did in weeks 1 to 3 or whatever it was, where he was just scoring two rushing touchdowns a week, averaging 33. And I think people just value the name as well. So I mean, I think you could definitely still get quite a bit for him, and I don't think he's a QB1 going forward. So good chance to sell.
And I agree with you there. If we were in a 1 QB league, I'd be looking elsewhere than Cam Newton because there's better blokes out there. My sell high is not really a sell high. Like he hasn't even done that well in the last 2 weeks, but I couldn't really think of any others. But Ryan Tannehill, he had a pretty good start to the season, so his average is still quite high. But in the last 2 weeks, he's had 2 sub 20 scores, but he's still the QB8. So if you could sell them to someone, they'd still value him quite highly. But I was looking a little bit deeper into his numbers, and he has 3 25 plus scores, and they came against the Jags, the Bills, and the Texans, who have been three poor defenses this season. And then in the next 5 weeks, he's got the Bears, the Colts, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Browns. So not an ideal fixture for Tennessee, as I keep talking about. And yeah, for me, in a QB1 league, I'd be looking to go elsewhere for him. Do you reckon anyone would cop Tannehill for Allen?
Yeah, people would cop it. I
think Allen's one spot. Yeah, I'd 100% rather Josh Allen, but I was wondering if given that they are my buy low and sell high, I wonder if people would cop that. I think Allen is like one position above him in terms of total points, so might have to go a little bit lower than Josh Allen to get rid of him. But yeah, for me, Tanner's, yeah, I wouldn't want him. But in a QB2 league, could arguably be a buy low. So it just depends what situation you're in. So take it with a grain
I
of
reckon
salt.
he's still like probably a QB1, like right on the low end of it.
Yeah, we saw last year in tough games, he still managed to do quite well in fantasy because like rushing and he starts to throw it more. They don't have to go to Derrick Henry every time. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he's
my
pretty
sell
consistent.
high.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, running
Okay,
backs.
cool. Buy low, Clyde Edwards-Helaire scored. They played the Jets. They ran the ball about 8 times. Mahomes threw the ball about 48 times, chucked up 5 touchdowns, but they're not going to have the luxury of being able to take the piss every week against the Jets. And, Clyde is still in that unreal offense behind the beast defensive line. He's splitting with Bell, but he'll still get majority of the carries. He'll average 5 yards a carry, score a couple of touchdowns here and there. So, yeah, I think people will probably be starting to panic, especially after this week. So I reckon it's a good chance to buy low on him because I'd still have him. He's definitely still easily a running back 2, just outside
He'd be a
that
pretty
running
decent
back 1.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me, we have quite a few people in our league. I don't know about you listeners, what your leagues are like, but a lot of people, given the amount of injury they're running back, quartet or however many they have, is looking pretty bad. And like I have Gaskin and Henderson who are both injured at the moment. So yeah, getting Clyde in as my RB2 would be pretty nice. My buy low is, well, first of all, before I start, I just wanted to say if you're locked in playoffs, I'm not. I don't know if you think you are or not. I'd 100% start making plays for the injured guys. Talking Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert, or even Miles Gaskin. I think right now, if the holders of those, I think there's 5 weeks left before the fantasy playoffs start. So if the holders of those players need a few wins, especially like Eckler, well, Gaskin less so, the other 3 definitely because they're on IR. So if they need wins and they need players playing now, you could definitely get them for a lot cheaper than what they're worth.
Yeah.
And you can kind of start just looking at their average in terms of valuing them rather than factoring in they're not going to play this week, because if you're already in playoffs, it doesn't matter if you lose this week. So yeah, just wanted to say that. But my buy low is actually Phil Lindsay. I think we've talked about this every single episode, but Melvin Gordon is still set to face his drink driving charges. And from everything I've read, it's meant to have him receive a 3-week ban. And I think that's meant to take place after this weekend. But I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, Phil Lindsay, he hasn't been getting any receiving work, but that's because of Gordon. So when Gordon gets suspended, he'll take that. And then in his last 3 matches, Phil Lindsay, he's gone over 70 yards from scrimmage, which has basically just been rushing. And following this week, they've got the Raiders and the Dolphins. So I think there's 2 pretty solid scores coming up from Lindsay in those 2 matches if Gordon does get suspended. So this one is solely based on the fact that I expect Melvin to get suspended for 3 weeks. If he doesn't, then don't go for him. But right now he's probably not being started by anyone. So I think you could get him for quite low. They would probably just see him as a bench option. But yeah, I reckon he could be a pretty juicy option. I'd be keen, but sadly the guy who owns Phil Lindsay doesn't play the game anymore, but that's okay. Who's your sell high?
Yep, sell high. I've got Kareem Hunt. Weirdly, he has not been performing at all without Nick Chubb in the team. But Nick Chubb is going to come back probably in 1 or 2 weeks. He's been listed as day-to-day by, what's his name? Their coach is day-to-day, so he's back any second. And when he comes back, Hunt's reign is going to be over. He'll still be good, but if you look on like Fantasy Pros rankings, things like that, they all still have Kareem Hunt as like the running back 6 rest of season. And if people are going to be valuing him in the top 10, I'll definitely be shipping him off, because as soon as Chubb's back, he'll be back in the RB2 range.
Yeah,
He'll still be good because he was balling out.
He'll still be
beforehand.
worth a start, probably.
Yeah, but yeah, he'll be in a committee. So
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the other guys that I mentioned before in terms of the injured players, they don't really have any RBs who are up there like Hunt is at the moment. But yeah, if you've got someone starting for them, for example, Jarek McKinnon, if you want to try and sell him for something, because in 2 weeks' time he's going to be waivers, so may as well get something for him. And that probably goes for all the backup RB2s. I've got this down. This is another obvious one like the injuries, but I just felt like pointing it out. If you're an owner of Giovanni Bernard, Jamal Williams, or Boston Scott, or Jarek McKinnon, I'd be trying to get them for anything this weekend, even if it's a bench player for some depth, because they're basically just going to go back into fantasy irrelevance this week or next week, depending on which team they're on. I don't know if that's. I don't know if you agree with that. Do you reckon any of them have a chance of still being fantasy relevant when their starters come back?
No, definitely not. As long as Sanders, Mixon, and Jones are playing, then they're going to be irrelevant. And Jamal's just been put on the COVID IR thingy, so he's cooked.
Yeah, it's kind of sucks for you. I think you would have started him anyway and kept him, but if I was you, yeah, it would have been a nice sell high moment for Jamal because he probably would have done this week. So you probably could have lured people into that. But yeah, my main sell. This is a very specific one, but right now I'd be trying to sell Alvin Kamara for Christian
Ooh.
McCaffrey. Plus, if you could get McCaffrey or even Dalvin Cook for Kamara and add something on, I would 100% do it because in my eyes, McCaffrey and Cook are arguably better than Kamara, if not level. So I think if you could get those two and then get more in, I think it's a positive trade for your side. Because I think with Thomas coming back, Sanders should be back. Callaway, I know he's only like new to the system, but he saw a bit of action the other week. Cook's now fully healthy. Their offense, their air game looks like it's starting to get back to normal a little bit, which probably will see Kamara get less receptions. So he's still going to be one of the top options, and he's still going to be receiving, 5 or 6 times a week, but I don't think we'll see any of this like 10 or 11 reception crap that we've been seeing. So yeah, for me, it's probably a risky play because if Kamara does continue to be the RB1 and, McCaffrey comes back and he's not looking as good or something, but for me, I think it's worth the gamble if you could upgrade another position or something like that slightly, because I don't think there's much in it between Kamara, McCaffrey, and even Dalvin Cook. So
Yeah, I rate that call. Yeah, if you could sell, if you could get
It's kind
McCaffrey
of
plus
what I was
more.
trying to do. Yeah, it was kind of what I was trying to do with my tight ends. I don't think I'm going to be doing it now because there's been some waivers today. But yeah, I have Gronkowski, and I was thinking of downgrading him for someone if I could improve elsewhere because I don't think, there was much between the two. But yeah, it's a risky play, but I think it's not the worst play going around. All right, wide receivers.
Wide receivers, yep. So buy low. I think you're going to talk about this bloke as well, but Robbie Anderson, his average is kind of starting to fall, but he's still seeing like all the opportunity, and he's seeing more targets than DJ Moore each week. And he's only scored one touchdown the entire season, which was in round one, which took me by a huge surprise. But he's due touchdowns as well. He'll score a few more going forward, and yeah, he's definitely a buy low. Like I'd still view him as not a wide receiver one, but like bordering on it, just outside that region.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you just said. Also, brilliant thing about the two Carolina wideouts, they have great yards per reception. And we've seen with DK Metcalf, even if you're getting, well, not on the weekend, but like in the first month of the competition, even if you're getting only 7, 8, 9 targets a game, you can still be in that top echelon of receivers if you're going at like 20 yards a catch.
Yeah.
But on Thursday Night Football, just going against the Falcons, they both went under 10 in terms of a score, but they had 8 and 6 targets respectively. That's Anderson and DJ Moore. Teddy probably had one of his weaker games, but he did miss time, and that probably just interrupted the offense in general because, they had that other quarterback come in for a couple snaps and then but CMC is going to come back. Davis had kind of started to become not so efficient on the ground, so that's probably going to improve their offense a lot. And they've got Kansas, Tampa, Detroit, and Minnesota coming up, which is probably going to suit the game script for Anderson and Moore. So yeah, I'll definitely think they're a buy low for sure.
Yep.
What about? I'll go my sell high. This is actually your riser of the week. Travis
Travis.
Fulgham. He's up to 86.1 rostered on. So he's not so much of a myth now, but he's still probably being underappreciated, I'd have to say. But in the first time he went 3 weeks of having 10 plus targets. This week he only had 7. And Jalen Rieger and Dallas Scott have both returned, and Ertz and Sanders are still to come. And after the bye this week, he's likely to face. This is if opposition teams view him as the wide receiver 1. He's got Bradbury after the bye. He's got Bradbury, Denzel Ward, Seattle, which is fine, and then Jair Alexander. So if he's been doing well, I think he played one of them the other week, and he still did well. But yeah, it's not an ideal matchup for any wide receiver. So if he's viewed as the wide receiver 1 by those sides in real life, yeah, it might be a sell high for me. But yeah, I can see why you'd keep him because he's still producing good output. But controversial, I'd say, from myself, but I don't mind the call.
I reckon he could be in either category, to be honest, because if people just look at like people's averages and he's averaging like just under 20 points, then you could probably sell him high.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I reckon he's the real deal.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he sees a lot of red zone as well, which is tasty. Who's your sell high?
My sell high is Mike Evans. He's just been copying. I think he's had a niggle all year, but he's just copying like so low in terms of snaps. And now they've got Antonio Brown coming in, Godwin coming back. He'll probably be the genuine wide receiver 3, potentially rotating in and out with Mickens or Scotty Miller. So it's it's tough to see him. Like he'll still have games where he scores 2 shitty touchdowns, goes big, but he's not going to have consistent volume at all going forward. And people still view him as Mike Evans, so people will want to buy.
He's basically a tight end now.
Yeah.
Like it's honestly a joke. Like he gets like 3 or 4 targets and gets a touchdown. He gets 12. So yeah, I'd 100% try and sell him up. When I was talking about the Pittsburgh wide receivers, I was actually thinking about the Tampa wide receivers. They're probably in a similar situation. Everyone has their week basically where they're the leading target getter. So I probably wouldn't want any of the Tampa wideouts at the moment. But yeah, they're all decent players, so I can get why you'd want them. But yeah, for me, they're overvalued. Tight ends, my buy low is actually Mark Andrews. We talked about him before. You were saying he was the 3rd tight end now that Kittle's gone.
Yep.
He's had 2 sub-10 scores in a row, but he is 6th in red zone targets out of all the tight ends in the competition. Coming up, they've got the Colts, the Patriots, the Titans, the Steelers, and the Cowboys. So 2 tough ones in there, the Colts and the Steelers, but then the other 3 are pretty nice for the Ravens. And realistically, this is like similar to the Buffalo Bills. You'd be expecting the Ravens to start lifting in the passing game. They've been pretty bad the last month, but they're a good team. If they're going to be any decent for playoffs, they've got to start hitting their straps in the air. So I think it's worth hedging your bets on that coming true and trying to snag Mark Andrews for low. Like I'm genuinely tempted to see if I could get Andrews for Gronk.
Yeah, that'd be
because
I
prefer Andrews's I just prefer his stat lines than Gronk's. But yeah, who's your buy low here?
My buy low is Dallas Goedert.
Dallas.
He came back this week, played barely any of the match because he's coming back from an injury off IR. Had like 1 catch for 5 yards or whatever, or 1 catch for 10 yards. I think he scored 2. But yeah, we all know how shit Ertz is this year, and he's still injured. Goddard's definitely their number 1 tight end. He was the number 1 tight end for the first month when they were both going at it. And like he's kind of become a bit of a myth because of the injury, and now he's just scored 2. So if you can secure him, I would, because he's definitely a tight end 1, probably potentially a top 8 tight end, given the lack of depth at the position this year.
Yeah, I think as he went on IR, he was like 6th in my rankings or something. He was right
Yeah,
up
he
there.
was
So
balling.
yeah, I 100% back that. Once again, sadly, he's with an irrelevant owner,
Yeah,
so
mate.
we can't get him.
Quinn never checks his team in our league. He's got 3 like genuine solid tight ends.
Yeah,
Like,
we've got three out of 10. There might even be 4 now who don't check their side. So
it's sad.
feel free to comment or DM the podcast on Instagram if you want to play next year. We're selling, we're looking for players. All right, my sell high is probably controversial because they've been doing well the last couple of weeks, but similar. I kind of echoed the same statements with Kamara, but Cook and Gronkowski, they just rely so much on TDs. I personally don't really like it, and they've both got players to come back, which just frightens me a little bit as a fantasy owner of Gronkowski. Cook's obviously got the whole band to come back. He's got Thomas, Sanders, and Callaway, if that matters. And then Gronkowski's got Godwin to come back and Brown to come in. So, yeah, and Evans might slowly get to full health. So, yeah, for me, both of them, they're still likely to going to get touchdowns. Their offense will probably improve as the players get back. So, you could look at it that way. But yeah, I just don't like their reliance on touchdowns. It kind of freaks me out because if all of a sudden they go 1 week without a touchdown, they're getting 6. So I'd rather someone who sees a bit more of the footy. Like I genuinely prefer Robert Tonyan to these two. But
You're
yeah,
not over
that's just
Gronk,
me.
surely. Surely you're not.
Like I don't know. Like Tonyan had 7 targets on the weekend. Like that's pretty juicy. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to compare those two because I could get some more. I could get some stuff for that. But yeah, nah. I had Gronk high in my rankings. I'm just a little bit frightened by some of the uncertain factors that are coming up in the next few weeks. Do you cop that, or do you
Yeah.
think they're both good fantasy options still?
Well, I think Gronk is good. Like he's copying a fair share of targets, to be fair. But
Yeah.
Cook is my sell high of the week. Exactly what you said, reliant on touchdowns. And we've watched Saints games where we've said to each other, like, is this bloke injured? Because he's just never on the field. I swear he plays
Yeah.
like 30% of the snaps, and he just comes out when they're in the red zone or whatever. And he's coming off like a decent score this week, so sell him, ship him off.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. See you, Jared. All right, final section, streamers of the week. We'll probably go a little bit rapid fire on this one. Quarterback streamers of the week. So this is people who are on less than 60% of ESPN fantasy rosters. We're in a QB2 league, so the QB streamers are pretty irrelevant for us, but it's kind of hard to choose. But who have you got in here as the best streamer?
Yeah, so for the QBs, we've assumed it's a 1 QB league for those playing at home, but Derek Carr only on.
How is he not in 80% of sides?
Couldn't believe it.
And he's gone up this week. So before this week, he was on like 40.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. But he's playing the Chargers, who actually have conceded a lot of like passing yards and touchdowns every week. So if Derek Carr is available and you need a QB this week, he's 100% the man for you.
Yeah, don't get scared by last week's stuff. They were in horrible conditions. They showed this field goal attempt and it like started on the right post and like just swerved past the left post because of the wind. And he only threw it 24 times, which is rare for the Raiders. But he's only had 2 turnovers in the last 3, so he's a pretty safe streamer. And yeah, as you said, Locke chopped up the Chargers on the weekend, so I'm sure Carr with better weapons and Locke can chop them up. And he's my main streamer, but also just a shout out to Nick Mullins. If you want to be risky, I think he's a pretty spicy option because Jimmy G's out for a little bit, so Mullins is going to be a more than a 1 week option if you see him that way. And yeah, the 49ers do have a tendency to run more than pass. That's what would scare me, but especially this week, they've got the Packers, so you think they're going to have to throw because of the game script. So I think Mullins could be a spicy pickup, but yeah, Carr's definitely the best streamer, 100%. Running back.
That game is going to be a shootout because both teams don't have a backfield, so both are just going to be throwing. It'll be a saucy one.
Yeah.
I
don't know who's Mullins throwing to, by the way.
Yeah, well, actually, Ayuk's just been put on the COVID list.
Yeah.
And Deebo Samuel's out. and Kittle's out.
Yeah, and Kendrick Bourne. I'm pretty sure Kendrick Bourne's the bloke who tested positive. So I actually don't know who's left. Like I don't know who the other players are.
Mate, that's actually disgusting.
Got to bring
We're gonna
like
have
Dante Pettis back from death.
mate, that is
Yeah, running backs.
yeah. All right. Yeah. So maybe don't stream Mullins this week after
Yeah,
hearing
go
that.
Carl.
Yeah, running back. My one is this is assuming Chris Carson is out, which I'm hearing he most likely will be. He's still projected 16 on ESPN or whatever, but he's going to be out most likely. So DJ Dallas, he's the last man standing in the Seattle backfield, just scored 22 against the 49ers because of 2 touchdowns. But like, I'd say he's pretty much a lock to score a touchdown in that Seattle offense. And yeah, he's going to get all the opportunity to himself. Probably isn't the best player, but opportunity is key, and being in a good offense.
He looked crap, and then he just whipped out 22.8. Like he looked like he was struggling, but
and the Buffalo, they're Buffalo, who have been pretty average against the run.
Yeah, 8th worst in yards per carry, and he scored 22.8 against a good defense in the Niners. He had 12 red zone opportunities last week, so targets plus running attempts. And the game script would suit again if things go to plan because they should take the lead early against Buffalo and he can run it down. My only worry is obviously if Carson plays, but also Travis Homer. He's a bit of a myth, but last week he was active, but he was basically injured, so he only had 10% of snaps. And when Carson originally got injured, Homer was actually the guy who came in, and then he got injured, then Hyde came in. So I'm a little bit scared of Homer taking Dallas's snaps. That's the only thing. But yeah, if Carson is out, he's probably got to be the guy you got to get. And I need a streamer this week because I have Gaskin and Henderson. So got my finger on the trigger, waiting for Carson to be ruled out. But yeah, he's probably the best option. The other guys who are interesting, Zach Moss against well, it's not really interesting. It's just he gets bulk red zone touches. He rushed for 8 red zone. He rushed in the red zone 8 times in the first week of the season, and then last week he had 6. So he can just occasionally be a red zone threat. And yeah, he's got a low floor, but he's got a high ceiling. So if you want to be risky there, if you want to just play it really safe, I'd go Naheem Hines, basically a lock to get 4 catches for like 40 yards. So if you want to get something around the 10-point mark, go for Hines. And then another guy with a pretty high floor is Damian Harris. They're against the New York Jets. So if you think the Patriots are going to score a lot of points, he's probably a good chance to run one in. So he could be worth a risk there. Wide receivers.
Yeah, I want to throw out Matt Breeder as well. Yeah, like yes, he's Boris, but they've got no one else bar Jordan Howard, who's strictly a goal line man. So Breeder should get some decent work. Wide receiver, pretty yuck to be honest on the streaming side of things. You wouldn't really want to be starting this bloke. This is probably if you've got 2 or 3 injuries, but Corey Davis against Chicago was like the best man I could find. I was going to say Ayuk, but he's just been ruled out on the COVID list. So Corey Davis been copying some good targets. Tough matchup, but I mean, he's in that Titans offense, so he should have some decent opportunity. Might score a touchdown. And if they decide to lock down AJ Brown, which they probably will, Davis might free up. So could be a decent play.
Yeah, I rate that. Davis is definitely a good option this week. This is a very rogue one. So you probably have to be in a deep league and you probably have to have 2 wide receivers and a flex. And this is probably a flex, but they're up against the Jags and it's Randall Cobb. I think Cooks and Fuller, obviously the 2 main men there, but I think they're going to absolutely bombard the Jags this week. I'm kind of worried what Deshaun Watson's going to do for your side, Pilch. I think he's going to absolutely kill it.
For that.
But yeah, I was looking at the Jags. They've yielded the most air yards per attempt. They've conceded the 5th most points, but that is including a bye. So on average, it's probably even further up. The Houston don't care about game script. They throw whether they're up or down. And Cobb saw 10 targets the week before the bye. And he's copped a red zone target in each of his last 2 matches. So he's been very inconsistent and he's missed practice this week because he's sick. But if you need someone just as a really weird flex option, he could be a chance to put up some points. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes. All right, last but not least,
I just thought of someone else. I'm not actually
right.
sure if he's in under 60%, but Marvin Jones. They're playing. They're playing the Vikings, and Galladay's out. So
yeah,
that's a good. If
shout.
he's on waivers, definitely stream him if you need someone.
Even Marvin Hall. But yeah, all right, tight ends.
Tight ends. I've got Robert Tonyan.
Yeah, same.
Down here. They're playing the Niners, which isn't the best matchup, but as we just spoke about, they'll be throwing the ball, and out of all the blokes on less than 60% of rosters, he was pretty much the only decent shout that I could find. So, yeah. I'd go snag him regardless, because just like going forward, I reckon he's a pretty good shout rest of season.
Yeah, he's been axed from 20.7% of rosters this week after a 7 target. He scored 12 against Minnesota. I'm so confused why. But yeah, he still sees good volume, so he's a pretty safe streamer. A risky one if you want to bite into it is Greg Olsen. He saw 2 red zone targets last week. Seahawks are likely to put up 30 plus against the Bills, and yeah, Olsen is one of Russ's favorite red zone targets that is not Lockett and Metcalf. So limited volume. I don't think he's seen more than 4 or 5 targets a game, but high scoring potential. But yeah, that's all I've got for us today. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, that's it. That's it.
All right. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the NFL Week 9.